Hi, everybody.
Peter.
It is 6:30, so I'd like to call to order the December 2nd, 2021 regular meeting of the Woodstock Planning Board. Melissa, do you have, or first of all, do we have a quorum? I guess we do. Let me check. 1, 2, 3. Yep. Okay, Melissa, do you have any updates to the agenda?
Just really quickly, there were 3 emails that came in that I just felt was important because it is public hearing night, and they were from Alexia, Nancy Schofler, and Neil, but that's it.
Yep, I've got those. Okay, everyone. So under communications and announcements, we got some 70 emails regarding the colony. The majority of them are in favor, 55 or so, for the point being that it provided a safe place to be during the pandemic and to enjoy each other in music and food. And there were some 15 or so against it, not against the colony and not against the beer garden, but about noise. So we have, and I hope Mike Stock is coming up, and I don't know if he's online yet. He called me and said his internet wasn't working.
Oh, no, yeah, I haven't seen him yet.
So
I was
we'll see.
wondering.
We'll see if he gets to join us. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 public hearings tonight and a sketch plan review. So I'm waiting on to see if Mike's going to join us. If not, he may call in. But I'll begin it. The first public hearing is a Michael L. Stock Jr. and Colette M. Stock, Planning Board Case 21-1080G. And this is a virtual public hearing for a subdivision application of a 34.28 acre lot into 2 parcels of 27.28 acres and 7 acres in the R5 zoning district located at 3537 Valley View Way in Lake Hill. So the rep is Michael Stock and Kenneth, and I hope they'll be joining us. I'll give it a minute and then I'll open the public hearing. I hope they can be here for it.
Is Michael here or not yet? I'm just looking. I don't see him. Okay.
Yeah.
Peter, if you want, we could skip. Oh, we can't because it's timed. I forgot. I was trying to think of an easy solution, but that won't work.
Peter,
Yeah,
it's
there is
Stuart.
Let's
Why
get
don't we
going.
wait till 6:35 since that's the scheduled
Yeah.
time? Maybe he's going to come on at the last minute for some reason.
Yep, that's what I figured.
Thank you. You can approve the minutes from November 4th. Then you don't have to worry about it later. Peter,
What's that, Melissa?
you can approve the minutes from November 4th.
Oh, good. Okay.
No time is wasted.
Okay, so the minutes from November 4th, if everybody is okay with them, I propose we adopt them as is.
So moved.
Read.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys. All right, so I just want to make sure what planning board members are here because I'm looking at a full screen. I see Peter, I see Stuart. Has John popped on or not yet? Lavelle? And no Connor, right?
Don't see him yet.
Thanks, guys. Everyone else I saw, I heard.
That's Mike. Hello?
I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry, we just have trouble with the computer, so I have to do it on the landline. I can hear you, but I won't be able to see what you're talking about.
okay. All right, never done this before, but I've got Mike on a
All
cell
right.
phone. So I introduced your case, Mike. And at this point, if you or Keith want to tell the board and the public what it is you're proposing.
Peter, open the public hearing first, and you have. it on
I'm
the-
sorry. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Mike, why don't you tell the board and the public what you're proposing?
We're proposing a new lot line, a new lot to be developed off my son's property. I'm representing my son, Mike Jr., which will consist of 7 acres, leaving him with 27 acres, .82. It's, as you've been out to the site, it's a relatively flat lot. It's contingent to the gravel bank. We've done test holes, which you saw up here. It's going to be an in-ground system because of the nature of the soil. It's perfect for septic systems, and it's on a level that is out of the scenic overlay.
Okay. All right. Let me just tell the board that I did do a site visit, and as Mike just said, the house site is very level and flat. It is on a gravel bed, so it is well drained. And as you just said, the test pits for the SDA were completely dry when I went there, and it was, after all those rains. So there's no wetlands anywhere near, and it's not in the scenic overlay. And the entrance to it comes off of Valley View Way, and it's an existing logging road. So there's actually very little cut and fill to be done to get the driveway in. So members of the board have questions for Mike in regarding his application? Members of the, okay, are there any
No.
members from the public in this meeting regarding this application?
I don't believe so, but we can let them answer. I got no communications from anyone on this case.
Okay. Well, so that is, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And at this point, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application pending draft resolution.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, all right, Mike. you'll
Mike, I'll
sit down.
talk to you next week.
Okay. Okay,
You all set?
y'all, we're all set, yeah.
Go ahead, Peter.
I'm sorry you got internet problems. I've had them myself. All right, we're gonna move on. Well, let's see, 6:45. We're still way ahead of schedule here.
All right.
Hey, Peter, I'm Ken Keith, I'm the land surveyor that's doing the survey work.
Right?
Hi, John.
Anything that needs to be changed on the map at all?
No, because you made that change where you changed the lot line down a little bit, and that's on the new map. So everything's there that we need. Yeah. Yeah, you're good. Okay. Okay.
Are we done, Peter?
Yep, we're all set.
And he'll bring the Mylars and the maps down to be signed by the chair of the planning.
I'll talk to you next week. If he can't hear me, Peter, just tell him that I'll reach out to him next week.
Okay, Kenny, thank you.
All right?
Everybody have a happy holidays.
You too.
You too.
Thank you, thank you.
Peter, you have so many skills.
Thanks for being so resourceful. Like, that was pretty good in the spur of the moment. I'm impressed.
Okay, in a few minutes, we have another public hearing. I don't know if the applicants are present.
I
It's
did see-
Nicholas Ballinger, if he's here. All right, I'm going to introduce you. I won't open the
Hello.
public hearing for a
Hi,
couple
Nick.
minutes. There
Hi,
you go.
guys.
Hi,
Hi,
Nick.
everyone.
Okay, so the next public hearing is 4345 Mill Hill Road LLC, special use permit 21-0362B. This is a virtual public hearing for a site plan review application for site plan modification to existing site plan in the HZ zoning district located at 4345 Mill Hill Road in Woodstock. And Nicholas is the rep. So Nick, why don't you, I'm gonna not open the, yes, I am. I can, well, it's a little early. Can't really open it yet.
Well, I'll waste a minute. Guys, if we have a lot of people on this call, and I'm just gonna remind you, please not planning board members. I like to hear your voices. If you're on, please mute yourself. The noise picks up and we can't hear who's talking. I would greatly appreciate it.
Peter, this is Stuart. I'm getting a message from our producers. We have to fill the next 4 minutes with some good air, so go for it.
Anybody know any jokes?
Yeah.
Stuart, we're waiting on you for a joke.
Sorry.
John Lavelle is in the house now. Maybe he could tell a story.
He's got to unmute himself.
Okay, I unmuted.
Hi,
Good.
beautiful.
What's the story of the day, John?
We're looking at you.
Absolutely waiting for the public hearing right now.
All right. Well,
Why don't you describe the project there, Peter?
Oh, that, yeah.
I could do that. We could do that and then open the public hearing. Nick, why don't you go ahead and tell the board and the board and the public what you propose?
Excellent. Thank you all for your time this evening. Behind Early Terrible, we have two structures that are open structures, and they have rooftops. And the purpose is to allow customers to enjoy outdoors in the safety, but also have a roof over their head. So we built these two structures in the back. And we're here to ask if we can have the site plan review modified to include these two structures.
Okay. Anybody on the board have questions about it? I still got a few minutes before I can open the public hearing.
Yeah, I presume this is two structures that Brian and I,
Yes, three of you went out for the site visit. John, Brian, and James all had attended and went out and saw, yes.
okay.
And how did everything look good to you, John and James that saw it?
James on yet?
Yeah, I thought they looked fine. Looked great.
What about Brian?
He's
I
on.
think they look okay. I think you and I, when we spoke, there's consensus that that property is now maxed out. So no more structures, no more building, no more anything, but those two are good. Do you agree, John?
Oh, totally. Totally. Nicholas, you,
Yes, sir.
You or I guess your dad have any intention for any more construction?
No. No,
That's a good
no
thing.
intention.
All right, 1 minute. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Melissa, did you get any letters or calls regarding this application?
I don't think so. A neighbor of Catskill Mountain Pizza, Linda Tiano, had some concern, and I believe she's online if she wants to speak when you ask for public comment. Other than that, no.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience here have something to say about this particular case? Not hearing anything?
I do.
I'm sorry, I see a hand waving somewhere back
Linda
there.
and Terry Lover. We can start with you guys. Unmute yourself.
Okay, hi. Hi, this is just in the interest of process because we're not really sure how things proceed with stuff, so we're learning. So are you allowed to build stuff first and then ask for a variance, or is it the opposite way? I'm really kind of confused.
This was a COVID, when COVID hit, Stuart, Peter, you can back me up. A lot of local businesses had done some things to accommodate their patrons and being outside. So now we're trying to rectify the site plans. So this is kind of a unique situation, Terry, in the times that we're living. Right, Peter?
Yeah.
They say it okay?
That's good. Yeah, it's, they actually, the building inspector, congratulated them for being one of the first to comply now with the new regulations. So that's what they're basically doing. They're, complying with the actual regulations, not under COVID.
So this is a new regulation that you can do it that way? Or is that a temporary regulation?
Can't hear you.
Oh, is that a new regulation or a temporary? So can
Well-
you do it? Can other people do that too?
Well, what happened was that during the pandemic, the supervisor allowed venues to be outside and on the other hand, not to be in those little buildings. So now that it's, now they're applying to be able to use those buildings. I'm not sure how that relates to pandemic since we don't see that ending anytime soon, but that's the situation, how this case came about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else in the public have any
I have
questions?
something to say.
Sure.
Hi, it's Linda Tiano. My video isn't working, so you can't see me, but I have a couple of things I'd like to point out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. They went to this zoning board because they had an order to remedy for their 50 square foot sign. The zoning board turned them down and told them that they couldn't have it. In the meantime, they took it down and they've replaced the same sign. It's bigger and it's brighter than it had been. So if they're in direct violation of the zoning law, how can they come before the planning board? And how can you hear this if they have a violation?
All right, well, the answer to that, and that's a question we're getting a lot of, and the answer is the planning board cannot issue violations nor remedy violations. All violations have to come from the ZEO. And so we can't remedy it, even if it is a violation or isn't, and you see it, the planning board has no authority.
Okay, but the zoning board turned them
It was
down
the
for
zoning
it.
board of appeals that handled that, Linda. You were at the meeting and
Right.
they applied for a variance for that.
Who's
And that is a
speaking?
different
Oh, Martha.
entity than the planning board.
I know what it is, but the zoning board told them they couldn't have the sign. And they still have it. They haven't taken it down. So
the
when
CEO
they're in violation,
But it's not this, it's not a planning board business. That has
but
to
the
do with
planning
the zoning
board, the planning board cannot hear a case if there is a violation against that
Well,
property.
as of now, there has been no other violation issued that I am aware of. That
Okay,
would be up to the building department.
okay. So in the same sense, they have 7 signs. They've added 4 tables and 16 chairs. And the 2 cabins that they're asking for permission for are in the 25-foot setbacks. And they don't have, they have to go to the zoning board to be able to put those buildings in the setback.
Okay,
I
well,
talked to Butch today and he said he didn't know anything about it.
well, when these
So-
cases get referred to the planning board from the building department, that means that they have found no issues or no violations.
But the building department didn't know about it today.
They referred it to the planning board months ago.
Okay, but the 2 buildings are in the setbacks. Why don't they need a variance to put them in the setbacks?
I brought that question up and the ZEO said it was permitted.
Who said that you can put buildings in the setback without a variance?
In the hamlet, in the district they're in.
No, you can't. You have to get a permission from the zoning board to put your buildings in the 25-foot setback.
Linda, I'm not sure why this concerns you at this point. I'm very
Because
unclear
they're-
about it.
Because they're in violation of the zoning law. That's why it concerns me.
They're not in violation of the zoning law.
Yes, they are. They're putting their 2 buildings in the setbacks.
This is Stuart Lipkin. If I can just make a suggestion, we're in a public hearing, are we not?
Correct.
Yep.
So during a public hearing, the comments from the public should be directed to the planning board, not across to other members of the public who are present, and vice versa. All comments from the public during a public hearing should be addressed to the planning board unless the planning board, and sometimes the planning board will ask a commenter to respond to a particular point, but the comment should be directed to us rather than across the room. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else have any questions on this case? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a
So moved.
comment about it.
Go ahead.
I'm very familiar with how those buildings came about after talking to the supervisor. And what Nicholas or someone in the planning board had said was correct, that during the pandemic, they were doing everything they could to accommodate customers and have it be a safe environment. And what they did was, instead of people crowding into Early Terrible, they were now able to sit outside or sit in these private booths so that they could be safe. And especially now with the new variant, I don't think we're going to see an end to this anytime soon. And I think it's reasonable for him to ask for this to be included in the site plan. As far as the signs and everything else, that really doesn't have anything to do with what this hearing is about. And so I would say that that's what we should focus on. Thank you.
Any other comments from the public regarding this case?
I have a comment.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
I just have a question. If you're adding additional seating,
Can you tell us who you are?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell us who you are?
Oh, I'm Jude Salato.
Okay.
If they're adding additional seating, is there additional parking requirements? Are there additional parking requirements? When I was on the planning board years ago, there were parking in lieu of fees. And I was just wondering if this changes the number of seating that they have, if that changes parking requirements?
I don't know if there was any seating changes.
Nick, you didn't have any seating changes. I think it was transferred basically. Nick, you're muted.
Sorry. There's
We
no
didn't
more
have any
seating.
addition, right?
No, because there's no more seating inside.
Thank you.
Okay,
So if this is a permanent site plan revision, the number of seats will stay the same even when they go back indoors, then those outdoor seats will be removed? Is that what you're saying?
So what I'm saying is, right now with the unpredictability, I can't say what the future holds. We're just trying to operate in the middle of this uncertain time. That being said, whatever when time comes or things change, we will, be prepared to cross that bridge. But for now, our interest is just in keeping the customers and our patrons and our community safe, and being able to keep our employees employed throughout the season, and just try to persevere through this COVID storm.
I'm not supposed to address you directly, but to the board, I respect that. But you're making basically a permanent revision to the site plan. And I'm just wondering if you're going to change the number of seats that are allowed on this premises in the site plan.
Stuart?
Oh, before the gentleman answers that question, I have a question and a comment. My question is, what's the use going to be of these outdoor structures that you've described during the winter weather? Okay. And also my comment is that nothing is permanent in terms of a change to a site plan until the planning board grants an approval and decides whether it's to be permanent or for some lesser period of time. That's it.
Okay, well, we're up to,
Jane Young has a question. Can I ask a question?
sure.
I mean, we are in the midst of a pandemic.
I
Um,
do. I want to look for a house in Catskill, okay?
But what's happening
there?
now,
Who's talking?
Where are you?
I don't know.
Leah,
I'm trying to talk,
are
Jane.
you still there?
I think Ruth Roches needs to be muted.
Oh. Oh, sorry.
So anyway, what's happening is that we're making all these decisions based on the situation we're in now, which is a pandemic, without realizing that we may go back to a normal life at some point in time. And I'm not really involved in the planning board very much, except for one case, but are we making these decisions and being short-sighted in thinking that this is the way it's always going to be? And we're making these permanent, which when things change, there are no other options. Am I misinterpreting what you're saying? I may be, I don't know.
This is Stuart Lipkin again. Let me kind of reiterate what I just said. The applicant has asked for a change to the site plan. And I suppose you could interpret his request as being a permanent request for a permanent change, but it hasn't been approved yet. And it's not going to be considered permanent unless the planning board approves it without a time limitation. And that we haven't addressed yet. So stay tuned on that tonight, I would say.
All right, great, that's fair.
Okay, everyone,
Judy has a hand.
we have to get to the next public hearing. So again, I'd like to entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Judy has her hand up for one comment.
So does Stephen Jones, sorry.
Yeah, hi. I would just like to reiterate that. I mean, shouldn't Nick really be going back to the town board and for the original emergency permission that he got and asking them to make these changes before he brings this to the planning board at the time when it's appropriate, after the COVID has passed? And the planning board, I think, should really be tabling this until after that time. And he's
Who's
really
speaking?
going back to the his original town variance or lack of variance.
Thank you for your comment. We've received it and noted it.
Who is speaking?
Upper
That
left.
is Steve Grenadier.
Judy has
Okay.
her hand up.
Oh, Judy? Yep.
Yeah, I want to make two observations. First of all, according to the county executive, we are still in an emergency or back in an emergency. Point one. Point two, he has the permit for a given number of seats. If he decided he wanted to keep the outdoors and add back the inside, he would have to come back for a revision.
Okay. So noted.
Is it also, at this point, Mr. Chairman, giving them permission regarding these two outside structure for a restricted period of time and not make it permanent?
We can certainly do that.
But we're still in the public hearing, so I think we ought to see if there are any more comments. And then maybe we can close the public hearing and move on to what we're going to do.
Yeah, we've got another public case coming up. So again, I'd like to ask that I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the 6:55 public hearing is 22 Rock City Road LLC, SPR 21-0355C. It's a virtual public hearing for a site plan review application for site plan modification to develop outside area for commercial and communal use in the HC zoning district located at 22 Rock City Road in Woodstock, and the reps are Neil and Alexia Howard. So I will I entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, before I have Alexia or Neil give their presentation, I just want to point out, because I know that of all the emails we're getting and so on, the biggest concern here is no one's against the colony or the Bill Garden. It has to do with sound, noise. And I want to be very clear, again, that is up to the ZEO And this town has a noise ordinance. And the planning board, this case is a site plan review. And site plan review is just that. It's parking, lighting, in and out highways, anything on the site. The planning board cannot dictate how a business runs its business. As far as the sound goes, this town has a sound ordinance. And whether it's the Colony or the station or Pearl Moon or the pizza place or anybody else, any issues to do with sound have to be taken. Basically, you go to the dispatcher and you ask the dispatcher, you tell the dispatcher what the situation is. And normally they will tell you to please go to wherever the sound is coming from and try to sort it out rather than send the police. So when we entertain the public input in this case, two things. One, when you raise your hand, Melissa is going to acknowledge you, and please state your name. We need your name on the record. So without any further, and one thing I do want to mention before I ask Neil to speak, of all the public emails, of all the emails and everything we got, the one that I'm going to mention is from Jonathan Hepner, who is the majority leader of the Ulster County legislation. And he said this: "Dear Chairman Cross and Planning Board members, I write to express my support for the application of Alexia and Robert Neil Howard for site plan modification to develop an outdoor area at 22 Rock City Road. I believe this application is in keeping with the town's aesthetic and appropriate accommodation, especially considering current events. COVID has presented many difficulties and challenges, highlighting the need for communities and governments to be flexible and open to change. One of the most significant developments has been called by medical professionals to reduce the risks by shifting service outdoors. Colony, a mainstay of our town and valued community partner, certainly rose to the challenge. Alexia and Neil provided a space that offered socially distant entertainment opportunities where residents could safely enjoy each other's company. It is not an exaggeration to say the Colony presented a lifeline to many over the past 2 years for residents, musicians, and workers and their families alike. These creative solutions and shifts in the way we do business are only possible with the support of local boards like yourself. I truly appreciate the hard work of the Town of Woodstock Planning Board and the difficult decisions you are asked to make to protect residents while balancing the health and stability of local businesses. With a town whose name is globally recognized, the challenges you face are unquestionably unique." So, Alexia and Neil, if you would like to tell the board and the public what your proposal is and how you want to deal with the sound issue.
Certainly, and this will take about 7 minutes, if that's okay. I hope that's a reasonable amount of time. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. And first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's on this call this evening for your support and also for the input and feedback and suggestions for how we can build the Colony Beer Garden into a place where the local community can gather safely and responsibly. And thank you to the Planning Board as well for considering our application. So when Neil and I bought the Colony in 2015, which was 7 years after we moved here, we hoped that not only could we renovate and bring the indoor space to life, but the outdoor area could become a place where local musicians and the community could gather outdoors on summer days and evenings under the stars to enjoy meals and music and perhaps even shake a leg or two from time to time. And so when the pandemic hit in 2020, we were set for our biggest week of indoor shows ever, yet we chose to cancel them even before the mandatory closures hit in order to protect the community. But once the full lockdown eased in June last year, we were able to bring our dream for the outside area to life and quickly pivot to the outside space as an area where, even amidst COVID, people could enjoy some sense of normalcy and enjoy safely. We're very proud that we were able to keep our staff employed and provide a safe space for local musicians to play to an audience during a very unusual and challenging time. And clearly things are still not back to normal today as COVID continues to play out in waves and our indoor venue is still not back to normal.
Alexia, I'm sorry, this is Brian. I'm going to pause you for a second. Whoever has the phone number 917-957, please mute yourself.
Did it?
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. Well, and clearly things are still not back to normal today because COVID continues to play out in waves and our indoor venue is still not back to where it once was, and quite understandably so. So just physically in terms of the site plan, we've fenced in the outside spaces, many of you will have seen. We've received permission from the State Liquor Authority to serve food and drinks outside. We've built a stage, we've added outside lighting, and we bought picnic tables to populate the space. In terms of what remains to be done, and it's all on the site plan, we still need to add a moppable floor under our outside food and drink service to bring it up, service area to bring it up to code. We're also asking to add 5 lights outside the entrance to the garden in order to make it more safe for people entering and exiting the area after dark. All of that is on the plan. However, as people have rightly mentioned, the elephant in the room here is clearly not about the site plan itself, but it's about the question of the noise levels from the outside music. And I would hope that we can propose a series of mitigation efforts that mean that we can continue to operate next season to everyone's satisfaction. To those of you on the line today who are concerned about the noise levels, Neil and I are definitely with you. Believe me, we ourselves cringed this summer when the noise levels crept up above an acceptable level, and we want to work with you to find a solution that works for everyone. So first, perhaps I could just take a little moment to explain what happened this season and then set out some tangible steps that we can take next year to address these very reasonable concerns. Now, the first complaints that we heard about came in the weekend before Memorial Day this year, following a show from a progressive rock band from out of town. We were alerted to the issue by the town supervisor the following Monday, and we immediately worked with our music team to remove inappropriately loud bands from the schedule starting about 2 weeks later, and also importantly to reprogram the schedule so that we would only have quieter singer-songwriters as the last acts of the evening after 8 o'clock at night. And our policy throughout has and remains to shut down all of the outside music by 10 o'clock at night. So from mid-June to late July, we actually received pretty positive feedback about the way that we'd reined in the noise from some people that we reached out to who had previously complained. And believe me, that is exactly how we'd like to operate on an ongoing basis. But the fly in the ointment this summer was the resurgence of the pandemic once the Delta variant took off. So just to explain that for a second, our booker started to book shows for indoors once the emergency restrictions were lifted on June the 24th. Now, as you can imagine, it's a little like steering a large ship. It takes about 3 months to get a schedule up and running. We held our first sold-out show indoors with Lucy Dacus on July the 25th, just before Delta became a thing. And fortunately, we had no contact tracing outcomes, even though we know that at least one person tested positive the next day, so they didn't catch it in the venue, but they were likely contagious at the time, which was a really scary proposition. Fortunately, we installed a medical facility grade aerosolized hydrogen peroxide air purification system that we paid about $25,000 for the previous October, which kills viruses and molds in the air. And fortunately, that seemed to have seen us through that day. But it was a very nerve-wracking time. I remember waking up every morning after that Lucy Dacus show and wondering if we could have inadvertently hosted a COVID spreading event. And so we felt very strongly as Delta started to surge after that we simply couldn't host large indoor events inside the Colony building. Our bigger priority had to be to protect the community until we had a better read on how Delta would play out. And secondarily, the other problem was that we had to consider our relationship with the artists that we already had booked for inside shows later in the summer, and how unfair it would be on them to simply cancel or break our contracts with them amidst the Delta wave. And this has been a hard time for musicians all around, as you can imagine. So we were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, which led us to sound problems later in the summer. So over the next few weeks, we did our best to juggle all these competing needs. And admittedly, there were a few larger out-of-town bands that we moved outside, including Tuba Skinny at the very end of July. There was an all-day reggae festival in early August. And then there was Tommy Two-Tone and Hop Along in mid-September, which was when we got another round of complaints. Now, obviously, these are not the kinds of acts that we would normally book outdoors, except for Delta and the bind that we were in. However, when we got alerted to that second round of complaints in mid-September, we either cancelled the remaining shows or brought them inside towards the end of the season. So the main lesson we learned here is that there is a certain type of musical act that is appropriate for outside and others that are simply not. Loud drums are a definite no-no, while more gentle bands, solo singer-songwriters and softer duos and trios don't seem to cause a problem or violate the noise ordinances. And in general, we found that it's the local musicians who really understand the noise issue, while bands from outside the area often didn't really respect our efforts to contain the sound levels once they were on the stage, and that's on us, frankly. So we certainly apologize to our neighbors across the valley that we inconvenienced this summer, and we want to make sure this doesn't happen again, and we've got time to plan for that. But I wanted to take the time to explain the chain of events that led to those booking choices this past summer. So moving forward, and this is the important bit, the plan for next season is a combination of physical noise mitigation efforts and also booking more appropriate music. So on the physical front, upon the advice of Mr. Pete Kagan, who kindly offered a sound consultation at our last meeting with the planning board, firstly, we plan to move the stage to the end of the garden so that it's no longer facing straight towards Ohio Mountain, but rather directly toward the Colony building itself. Secondly, we plan to surround the stage on 3 sides with sound insulation materials. We were effectively operating without any sort of sound condom last season. Thirdly, we plan to build a funnel of extended sound baffles diagonally out from each corner of the stage into the garden to absorb more of the sound from the stage. And hopefully these measures will all serve to contain the sound within the garden itself, rather than broadcasting it up and down these hills. And then in terms of the musical guests we intend to invite, firstly, obviously, avoiding bands with loud percussive drums or excessively loud bass lines. Secondly, ensuring that our sound engineers are booking bands and individual musicians who truly understand and will respect the noise ordinance and the constraints. And thirdly, not to book bands to play outside at the same time as we have ticketed shows inside. And that probably means that most evenings, the loud music is going to wind up before 8 o'clock. However, there may be certain acts who are very appropriate for outside that we might choose to pivot outside on the day as a ticketed event if the weather is good. But as always, they would be appropriate, and the requirement would be that the outside music would be over before 10. So thank you for the time. I hope that explains what happened over the course of this past season and how the actions that we're planning for next year should ensure a safe space for the whole community to enjoy, while also addressing the concerns of those who were adversely affected by certain musical acts this summer. And for that, we apologize and want to make sure that we can work together to address all that. Many thanks for your time and your consideration.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So we can entertain comments from the public. Please raise your hand and let Melissa acknowledge you and give your name to it.
Stephen Joan. I have first Stephen Joan.
Muted. It's muted.
Steve, you're muted. You're muted. Thanks, Stuart.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. I really appreciate what everything that you said about the colony. And I remember last year, 2 years ago, running around looking for the bad Airbnb that was making all the noise. But I think the idea of having amplified outdoor music is totally against the laws and the regulations and the character of this town. You know, basically you built an electrified stage, speakers 20 feet in the air, out, you know, facing out towards the valley. And what you've created is an outdoor amplified concert venue, which I think is really ridiculous, doesn't really work. Now, I'm not going to speak to the noise issue, the noise law, though I think that clearly you're in violation of it, nor do I really want to speak to what during the COVID period, because I think you are doing good things and will do good things during COVID. But if you get a site plan that's approved, this is going to go on for in perpetuity. It'll go on as long as you are the owners. It'll go on for the next owners. It'll go on as you change your opinions and the economics change over time. Now, the planning board review section reads, that a preliminary site plan should include protection of adjacent property owners from noise, glare, unsightly conditions, and other objectionable features. And basically, the adjacent property owners is really, in this case, the whole town. And the zoning law says no one can operate any source of sound in a manner that creates a sound level which exceeds the limits for their zone. And the code goes on to say, outdoor locations within the Hamlet commercial, which I believe is where you are, the sound level should not exceed the limits, which I will read in a minute, at a point 10 feet or greater from the sound source. Now, what are these limits? Basically, during the day, it's 64 decibels. Well, normal conversation is 50 to 65 decibels, and laughter is 60 to 65 decibels, and a vacuum cleaner is 70 decibels. So I don't see how any way you could have amplified music, you could have speakers anywhere on your property in an outdoor venue that can comply with both the planning board's mandate to review it in terms of noise and with the zoning law. Maybe go on to another issue. When you filled out your environmental review, you basically talked about an outdoor seating garden, which nobody, I think, really has any problem with, and a stage. You didn't mention the speaker system. Including an amplified outdoor concert venue would be clearly in violation of the zoning law of the town. There's no way that you could have speakers outdoors and comply with the noise limitations in the zoning law. And you didn't put that in your application. And if you would have put it in your application would have said that you were not in compliance with the local zoning law, because this is really a new business. It's not the same business as being indoors. It's an outdoor concert venue. And you would have had to go through a tweaker or a seeker review. So I think there's no way that this could ever, moving a sound system, could ever be in compliance. Now, this is a new business, and I think the planning board has total control over what the site plan includes. And you didn't put in your site plan what type of sound system you've had. I don't know whether you include a sound system in your site plan. I assume you do from everything you've just said. So I think it's totally proper for the town planning board to review it. I think they should not approve a sound system because any part of sound system, any kind of speaker system is in violation of the noise, gives you permission to violate the noise law, violate the zoning regulation, and is really very questionable from an environmental point of view. Now, I really have nothing against the Colony. I think they've done a great job. I think they're a great asset to the town. I think all the musicians in town have really gone out of their way. It's been a great venue during COVID. And I'm not saying that anything that you should work out these differences with the town during COVID. But I would hate to see the town planning board approve a site plan that for in perpetuity will create problems and noise and all kinds of arguments and disagreements within the town. Now, a lot of people have really been hurt. Some people have had minor discomfort. Some people have had major discomfort. Sometimes you start your music in the middle of the afternoon and it runs all day long until late at night. So when you walk outside, what you hear in the background is your music. And I don't think this is appropriate for the town of Woodstock. And I think that pretty much says what I think I have to say.
I see Jane Young and then second Michael Mulvey. You got to unmute yourself. Michael, I see you. I'm going to let Jane go first.
Got it. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. So, I agree. I think the Colony has been great. I think, it's wonderful to have new blood and new life in Woodstock. I've been here since '72. We've had a number of wonderful music venues, as I said in my email to the board. We've had the Joyous Lake. We've had the Tinker Street Cafe. We've had the Bearsville Theater. We've had the Pinecrest. All of those venues were indoors. Those venues did not go outdoors and, blast through the valleys. I just think that it's something that we have to think about, something that as Steve said, will be in perpetuity for this town. And this town is just not about music. We also have artists who want to be out in the mountains. We want to have older people like myself who want to sit in their garden and have peace and quiet. There was so much venom directed at anyone on some of the social media pages that we were all against Woodstock and maybe we should move. And, you know, this is my town. I've lived and worked here for 40, 50 years. And I'm very passionate about it. And I don't know why during the middle, as I said before, of this pandemic, that we're granting all of this to permanence until we can work it out. And I know you guys have been really, really very accommodating to all of us, but that's no guarantee for us. We need, before the planning board makes a decision, we really need to come to some agreement where I'm going to have some of my peace. The music starts at 2, it ends at 10. I have to close my windows in the summer to not have that coming in my windows. I live on Ohio Mountain Road. And, you know, it's just not a quality of life that we have to endure for your business. You know, I feel, you know, I should say it that way. And I'm willing to work with you guys too, but the way it was last summer is totally unacceptable. We all thought it was a good thing. You know, this is great. Let's keep it going for the colony. And we endured it. You know, and I liken it to a dripping faucet. It drips, it drips, it drips. Sometimes it doesn't drip, then it drips again, but you're always listening for it. And then when it comes, it's like, oh, it's back. It's really hard. It's really hard. So I don't agree with having amplified music outside. So anyway, that's my spiel. All right.
Michael Mulvey.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everybody for their comments and for Ms. Howard for bringing us up to speed on why things went the way they went. And I just want to bring a couple of things to the fore. And I'm not fully versed on how the Hamlet zoning, right, this mixed use zone, what the actual specifications are. But I want to point out that businesses like Woodstock Automotive, okay, and businesses like the building supply had saws running all day long and hammer jacks running all day long, 6 days a week, okay, for those businesses that were essential to this town, and they provided jobs. Now, there needs to be some focus and attention to clarify, and I understand this doesn't come under the bailiwick, you know, under the purview of this board, but there has to be some clarification about, you know, decibel levels and what type of use can exist in the hamlet, because it is a mixed use zone. I think that that's important, and that will have to be brought up to the people who can speak to that. But I think that we did spend a lot of money on this comprehensive plan in 2018. And, you know, I've lived in this town for 25 years now, so it makes me a relatively short-term person, you know, to a lot of people here. But I've had stuff happen all around me, including a pool put in less than 100 feet from the mill stream by neighbors that were loaded, and they just steamrolled their way through it. And I was saying, you know, and there was constant noise during the construction. And anytime someone comes into this town and throws a lot of money around, you know, their contractors are going to be making noise from 6 o'clock in the morning until, you know, until it's too dark to work, which in the summer is 9:30 at night, you know, and that, you know, and that's not even in the hamlet. That's anywhere in this freaking town. Pardon me for, you know. So, well, I understand this is a very difficult thing to unpack. I think we have to look at the fact that in that mixed use zone, there is a history of there being, you know, like stuff that exceeds what, you know, some of the people that are complaining, you know, what their concerns are. And that's been historical for the 25 years that I've been here. Okay. And I just want to point to the amount of jobs that by having an outdoor venue during tourist season, that aside from the money, it's, you know, by having people have a place to go where they're entertained, right? There's a lot of jobs that the colony is providing, you know, for servers, for cooks, for bartenders, for bookkeepers, for stage crews, and for the hundreds and hundreds of musicians whose face are the brand of this town. They bring the money in for everybody else. That's why people come to the drum circle. Oh my goodness. You know, I mean, I understand it's only two hours, 1 day a week, but there's many different interests that want a piece of some of the prime time during prime season to do their thing. So I understand it. It seems like the owners of the colony are extremely sensitive to how they could maybe work with this, and it will be up to the town to give us clearer guidelines on how to proceed forward. But going back to this comprehensive plan, there are a lot of things in it. And in my letter, I refer to just a few things. You know, on page 27, the first paragraph about strengthening of the arts. I mean, if one were to go and read that, you know, then on page 30 about economic sustainability, a vital link, you know, and then on page 31 in speaking the section about the arts. I mean, it specifically speaks to how, you know, working together is important. Now we have a partner here in the Howards and their team, you know, as to how to get the town to move forward so that its brand and its identity can be, but the plan also speaks to bringing younger blood, younger artists in. And I understand, I'm now over 60 myself, and I live on the Millstream, and you know, on the bottom of Ohio Mountain Road, right behind, you know, property that Meskel Hornbeck's family built, you know, the Henderson property. And I really enjoy my peace and quiet quite often, yeah. So I understand, I'm not, you know, I'm a musician, but I understand how this is difficult. But I think we have to also look at how the planning board can, since that's who we're addressing here, how they can seek to create the possibility and not prohibit the possibility of all of the elements that this plan speaks to. You know, we don't, like, you know, some people are saying we don't want to rush into, we've approved some things here and now we're going to just open the doors for anybody to do what they want. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that most people with money have done whatever they wanted. And here we have a partner that wants to work with the town. And if the planning board could actually look to how they can be informed to some degree by this comprehensive plan and the things that it speaks to, you know, as I said, on page 31, on page 30, on page 27, and in the conclusion, you know, I think that offers, well, not a lot of technical answers as to how many decibels, and like I said, that goes back to the town, but I just think that I would like the planning board to consider how important it is for us to consider the future of this town, the future of jobs, the future of how we attract people into the town who want to come here and spend money at all the, you know, in the hamlet, at all those businesses, you know, and what the colony represents as part of the town's identity and how we can look to being informed by this comprehensive plan. So I thank you all for your attention. And I know that this is a difficult topic, and I'm actually going to look to see how the town can, you know, we jokingly referred to something called, to clarify the noise issue in the hamlet. You know, the people at the station, they said every time Ted Orr played at the station, the police were there. Okay, and that was indoors, you know. So they talked about clarifying it with an ordinance called the Ted Ordinance, and trying to get the town to actually, you know, come down on how many decibels where and you know what, and that would then give businesses some guidance, so that it's not arbitrary and up to the officer who shows up and how loud the person's complaining is and which band happens to be on the stage to set the tone for how businesses can actually book acts and keep the town's brand functioning, you know, on the long term, you know. So thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to remind everybody, I know we have 3 more people that I'm going to let speak, but I want to remind you that time is a restriction and we have other public hearings and meetings to tend to. So if you sent a letter, please just do a summation so you can be heard. Next, I'm going to ask on Claire Keith. Keith, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me correctly, everyone?
Yep.
Am I heard? All right. I will give a brief introduction because I think it matters. My name is Claire Keith. My home is on Glasgow Turnpike, where I have lived for the past 46 years. My grandfather was a professional musician. My mother was a professional musician. My late husband, Bill Keith, was a professional musician, well known to the Woodstock community and internationally. I myself, in my earlier years, played music for a living. My children and grandchildren are now carrying the musical commitment into their future. Music is essential to my life. I cannot live without it. And this is precisely why I'm here tonight, to oppose with anguish and the most extreme concern the application in its present form that we are currently discussing. Mrs. Howard spoke with great concern of what she called a reasonable concern. For me, and I think for others, it is an existential concern. Michael was right, it is about the future of this town. What happens is that once you amplify sound outdoor on the high stage with baffles, a friend of ours who is sound engineer agrees that we have lost control of where the sound will go. Due to topography, wind shifting, there is no longer room for possible mitigation. Like other presents in the past 2 years, I have lost my home's outdoor life entirely to colony's noise pollution in the spring, the summer, into the late fall, during the most important, vital hours of daytime living. And that was not for certain bands, it was all the time. I found myself, to my own distress, calling dispatch, running down, becoming hysterical, which I don't normally do. And I'm sorry about this, but this is what it was. I can no longer sit in peace. I cannot think. I cannot garden. I cannot host friends or family without a constant, unwanted, ill-defined mix of electronic sounds that is colonizing my ears. Most of all, my precious right to listen to my classical music on my porch, as I have done for decades, has been stolen from me. Calling dispatch, Peter, is not a solution when something is chronic, because it's like swatting flies. By the time the police can come, it is in between act, or the wind has shifted and they cannot stay. And puts the burden on us to constantly trying to go around. It does not work once has been released. This has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with the original business model of Colony, which I heartily support, nor with their desire to have an outdoor terrace, which I can also support. What it has to do with is a business, any business's unprecedented petition to gain for itself something that is truly astonishing, which is a permanent right to broadcast indiscriminately its amplified commercial product into the public and the private soundscape of the community. Today it is a sound, tomorrow it could be a smell that would accommodate people differently. What it has to do with, as Steve mentioned, is the town's current zoning ordinances on noise and the covenant of common sense and neighborly values on which they have always rested until now. If this exorbitant privilege were to be granted, we should toss this entire foundation aside and start from scratch, because it would have to be granted to any other business asking for it. I am concerned that the current language of the application is not presenting adequately what would really be granted. Steve has spoken to this. There is very little mention at all about the sound issue. It's all about the mechanics and the outdoor. The only brief reference to the sound is a 10 p.m. curfew and a few trees for sound barrier. I would like, and I'll try to be brief, I would like also to speak to the apparent imbalance in letters of support or dissent. I am concerned that many of the well-meaning letters to the board generated recently by a call for support by Colony on Facebook, and I'm glad they did, they should have to do so. I don't believe they are aware of the full consequences of what they support. I took the time to look at all the liked on that site to see how many of them were actually in town. Many of them came from Chicago, from New York. They are people who had had a wonderful time in the summer here. If you ask people if they like beer, a sunny terrace, and a couple of hours of outdoor music, they will almost all say yes, myself included, although perhaps minus the booming speakers. And listing their support in those narrow terms is misleading. If we ask people if a town should seriously consider an entirely new business model by which a single private entrepreneur asks for the right to broadcast its amplified product indiscriminately into both the public and private residential airspace, whether it be sound or smell or any other product whose dissemination cannot be effectively controlled once it is released, I would hope that they might start thinking a little deeper, because it is astonishing. And finally, several town citizens who risked raising the problem on Colony's noise pollution on local social media were rudely told that they were against music, against the town spirit, and they should just pack up and leave. Music does not have a monopoly on Woodstock identity. I know, because my husband was part of the musical plague of locust, if you will, that landed in the 70s following Bob Dylan and others, and we all settled here. We were welcome and it worked out. But it is not the monopoly. There are other arts professions and activities that depend equally on preserving the town's character for the future, including for the young generation coming in today. And finally, we may go back to normal, but no, we may yet face more pandemic hardship with a new COVID variant that's profiling on the horizon. Many other businesses and individuals have suffered from the pandemic in the community and in the nation. Not all have had the benefit of such an extraordinary operating privilege for economic relief as that was granted to Colony. Others have understood or had to understand that temporary is temporary for a reason and cannot be turned into a permanent right. They have worked in the past 2 years, especially in the music area, which I know, and the academic area that I know, to find alternate long-term options different from this unsustainable temporary. And I'm sure Colony is doing so as well. I hope they can find a solution that could combine a new outdoor space with music that reaches only and appropriately their paying patrons who have chosen to be there. And like others, from music clubs to the Philharmonic orchestras, are using some very creative streaming fields to leverage their reach and give musicians that opportunity to work, to gain audience and get some income. So I hope and think that we will find a way to do so. I hope that I have conveyed a little bit the enormity of the change that this would bring to the town, and that this has nothing to do with music, with something much, much larger, and the foundation on which all our neighborly values have been planted to date. Thank you very much. I have such a knot of terror in my stomach that I'm going to lose my home forever, and I'm going to close on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Next, I have 3 more people with their hands up, and guys, I got to cut you off because unless you can be really, really quick, because we got to move on. Marcia's willing next, then Lori, then your Raina. Please keep it short and to the point. Thank you. Marcia, unmute yourself.
I'll try to keep it short. I know that you're short of time. First of all, I grew up here. I've been around this town for a long time. I did leave for many years. And I don't remember there never being outdoor music. In fact, one of my first jobs was for Albert Grossman, and he had bands and parties playing outside of the Bear while he was building the Bear Theater. Joyous Lake, granted the music was inside, but it was blasting through open doors on the huge balcony. There was the Sled Hill Cafe. There was the Purple Elephant. This town, and especially in the hamlet of Woodstock, has always been supportive of music. I think what the Colony did was fabulous. And furthermore, she explained the issue of what happened and why the music was so loud. And she had stated over and over again that she is going to remedy this issue by having acoustic bands, having singer-songwriters. And from what she described with sound mitigation, I mean, it seems to me it's going to make a huge difference. They care about this town. They care about the neighbors. They've gone out of their way to address the complaints. And there's been a lot of misinformation given here too. When Steve spoke and said that it goes against the town of Hamlet and it affects the neighbors, which is the entire town, that's not the spirit that the law was written in. The neighbors happen to be a cemetery, a parking lot, another commercial building across the street. Woodstock, the sound carries no matter where you live. I live on Spear Road. I hear music from in town. It's the nature of living in Woodstock. The station, the Bear Cafe had outdoor music all 2 years ago, all summer long. Acoustic, singer-songwriter, but it was amplified. So this is not a new thing. And like Peter said so eloquently at the beginning of this meeting, this isn't about the noise. This is about a site plan. There are a sound ordinance that will deal with noise issues if in the future this continues to be a problem. But from what everything that Neil and Alexia said, it sounds like they are well aware of what happened in the past and are pretty confident that that will not be the case for the future. So I hope that the planning board really takes into consideration that this is a site plan for a beautiful outdoor garden that everybody can enjoy in this time of a pandemic. And I fully support what they've done and what they continue to do for our town. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Marcia. Urena? Yeah, Urena and then Lori. Or whoever unmute yourself first.
Hi.
Thanks, Urena.
I'll go ahead unless you want to go ahead, Lori. Okay.
Go.
So I'll try to be as quick as possible. First, I'd like to really thank the Howards for taking the time to consult with a sound engineer that is very aware and that they went on site and, you know, committed to addressing the sound issue that some of my neighbors are struggling with in their space. I can definitely empathize with community members that are having a hard time. I also live off of Broadview, which is kind of in the same area as Miss Young or Mrs. Young, Jane. And so I understand, and I've heard the music in different parts of the community. At the same time, I agree that this is part of our community. And I've also been woken up at 7 in the morning from lawn mowers that are decibels are higher than some of the music in the mountains. But I also want to say, I hope that the planning board will give the Howards the opportunity, which they've earned in showing us in the last 2 years that they're committed to our town and the people in the community, but will really take and listen to and look at their site plan in a way to change and mitigate the sound issues that we can all work together. And then I'm hoping that the community members will also give them the opportunity to give it a chance to see if that will work as well. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Urena. Lori, unmute yourself. Urena, you can lower your hand too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. First of all, I do commend Alexa and Neil on the thoughtful presentation and the great effort that they have made in the last several years to create an outdoor space, not the beautiful indoor space, but the outdoor space for community gathering. Oh, hold on, I have to mute. Alexa, off. Technology. So Peter Cross said it absolutely correctly. This is not about sound. It is about a site plan. And what was developed in that shaggy, old, rundown garbage heap that was in the backyard has created a place for young, old people of all ages to gather to have a very simple meal or a drink and listen to the sound of music in our community. I just hope that we can acknowledge what's been created and allow the colony to work ever more steadily towards protecting the environment of the garden as well as their neighbors, which I know they want to do 100%. Thank you so much. Thank you all for your work.
Thanks, Lori. Peter, I think we can close the
Okay.
public hearing.
Great job, Melissa. You did a great job on that. So I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So normally what we would do at this point
You
is,
can hold off, Peter. We'll hold off and take care of all that. I have a list. We'll take care of it after the.
okay. So now we're a little late for this public hearings for 7:05, but here it is. Centerline Communications as agent for New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, which is AT&T, special use permit number 21-0322E and special use permit number 21-0361E. This is a virtual public hearing for a site plan review and special use permit application eligible facilities request for modifications to site plan to perform 5G retrofit, remove 4 antennas, installing 2 new, removing 4 TMAs, 2 duplexers, 9 radio units, and installing 8 new radio units, replacing 2 existing DC trunks, and reinforcing existing mounts on existing cell tower located in the R8 zoning district at 122 California Road. And the rep is Brenda Blask Lewis. I'm going to turn this over to the Vice Chair, Stuart, who has done a lot of work on this. So Stuart, it's all your court.
We have to, do we open the public hearing?
I'm so sorry. I entertain a motion to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Stuart, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Peter, and fellow colleagues on the planning board. Ms. Lewis, are you on the line?
I am. My voice is all that great, but I'm trying.
Okay, well, let's do the best that you can. I'd like you to make a brief statement in a summary fashion of the nature of the application and what you're seeking. So if you go ahead and do that, please.
Sure. What AT&T is proposing to do is some equipment modifications to the existing tower on California Road. The equipment modifications will just be removing old technology and installing new. So that would be replacing existing antennas with newer antennas and radios and whatnot. So basically,
They just lost power.
We did, but we got it back. Keep going.
Keep going, Ms. Lewis.
I was gonna say, I'm on a roll here. I still have a voice.
Power? Well, my computer's still running, but that's on the battery, huh?
I think you're gonna have to mute yourself.
Well,
We're in the
Peter,
middle of
I muted you. Continue, Brenda. Sorry, we all lost power here.
That's okay. That's all right. So basically, what they're
They must know you're sitting in the
proposing to do.
Yeah, we just lost power up here, folks.
Continue.
Okay. The equipment modifications that they're proposing is basically maintenance to their equipment that is
Well,
currently.
that's because my speaker is plugged,
Peter,
it's
you
not
gotta
plugged
be-
into that.
Peter, I muted you for now until you figure it out. We can see you, but we can't hear you. All right, keep going, Brenda. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, I kind of wrapped it up. It's the equipment modifications that they're proposing is maintenance to existing equipment. So they're going to take down some old stuff and put up some new stuff.
Okay. Brenda, before we go into the public comments, I just want to listen from you that last time you were present before the planning board on this application, you told us that the equipment changes involve a 5G retrofit to equipment that's capable of 5G. I just want, right?
Well, that's what the construction drawings show. That's the title of the page is 5G retrofit. And 5G is basically, it's going to be using that 5G equipment is using the 850 frequency that's already installed on the tower. So they're not going to change anything. The 850 frequency is within AT&T's license under the FCC, and that's not going to change. It's been on the tower pretty much since the equipment went up on the tower back in what, 2000, early 2000s.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open up the public comment. If someone wants to make a comment, let's raise your hand. I'll recognize you one at a time. I see that Rex Funk's hand is up, so it recognizes Rex Funk. If you can be on.
About that.
Okay, thank you. So I just wanted to start off by just saying that I think this move to 5G on this on our tower is going to be sort of a foot in the door for potential for the millimeter wave small cells to come in, and so I have a lot of questions about the application. I've looked at it pretty thoroughly, and I'd like to know what components in the installation are actually for 5G. I'm curious, the antennas are designed for 3G and 4G, and I'm curious why there are 4 antennas currently, and then there will be 2 when the installation is complete. So I'm curious why you're going to less antennas.
No, what they're going actually from 6 antennas to 4 antennas. So there are going to be 4 antennas installed when the modifications are complete.
So the question that the gentleman is asking, and let us know if you can address it, is why are you going to a smaller number of antennas?
Why are we antennas? That's the way that the scope of work is being set up, and they're adding radios that can do. I mean, I'm not really one to probably explain this best, but the concern I know he has is with 5G and what it can bring. We're saying is that 5G is going to be operating off of the 850 frequency, which currently exists. So the response that I would have, or that AT&T would have as well, is they can achieve 5G over the 850 frequency spectrum. However, note that 850 has been deployed at this site for years, and including there's nothing novel about the spectrum per se. Most of the controversy surrounding 5G has been related to the millimeter wave that you mentioned, spectrum, which is not currently being deployed at this site. And it's not part of this modification.
Mr. Funk, do you have any further comments to make?
Yeah. I also, one more question, and then I do have a comment, is whether the power output will increase when it's using the 5G component.
So I'm going to ask the representative, are you able to answer that question? And if so, can you please?
The main purpose of these upgrades is to increase both the speed and capacity of the network as far as the amount of power coming out of the antennas themselves. I believe it's equal to what's up there right now.
And what's the basis of your knowledge on that? Are you're not an engineer? You've told us you're the real.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer, so I can't speak to that.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from Mr. Funk?
So my comment to the board is, sorry, my comment to the board is that I feel I just want to. I'm hoping there's a way. So I'm just going to ask you to please see if there's any errors or omissions in the application that could be a reason to deny it, because often there are errors. And that's why I was asking, what is the real purpose? Why are they decreasing the amount of antennas? And I'm hopeful, because I don't want anything 5G to come to Woodstock. I think 4G is plenty adequate for what people are needing. And I think I also just want to urge you to think about as preparing, the planning board should be prepared for what may come in the future, is an application for small cells. And in that case, our current zoning laws pertaining to wireless installations is totally inadequate. And so I don't know, I know you're not the decision-making body on that, but whatever, I just want to urge any effort that you can make towards helping get this ideal zoning law in place, which Andrew Campanelli, as you probably know, is currently working on a draft. So the idea is that I want to present is to help make sure that all of that gets intact, because what he is going to be presenting will enable us to regulate the responsible placement of the small cells if we get to another situation where we're just forced to accept this and we can't deny the application.
All right, Mr. Funk, thank you for your comments. They've been received by the planning board now. And I'll just reiterate what's been said, I think on previous occasions, is that the planning board does not enact the laws of the town. It's the town board that's the legislative body. So if members of the public are seeking to have any laws on the books changed or strengthened or modified, those efforts have to be directed to the town board, since it's the town board that has the authority to legislate. We don't. Okay, I see that Shelley Tran has her hand up. So Shelley Tran, what is your comment?
Unmute yourself, Shelley. Thank you.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I feel that this is a foot in the door and that the next step is 5G in Woodstock. I myself and many other people, as you saw, I don't know if you were at the town meeting when a lot of the town showed up. We don't want this. I feel like it's a step in the door. I do want to understand better what this modification is for. She doesn't really answer me. So can you please explain why you're doing that now and what's the purpose? Upgrading doesn't mean anything to me.
Okay, the comments are directed, we're taking them as comments to the board. So
Okay.
I will give the representative an opportunity to amplify her comments if she wishes to do so.
Okay. I don't understand what this modification is for.
Who said that just now? Shelley?
Shelley.
Okay, so Brenda Blask-Lewis, are you able to further amplify the purpose of the equipment changes that you've mentioned?
Like I said, what we're proposing to do is to upgrade equipment for the purpose of it's like maintenance to their equipment. So equipment gets old. The life use of it is not what it used to be. So they have to install new equipment. So they just upgrade to the newer technology. They always stay, AT&T will be always staying within their FCC licenses. So any equipment going up on the tower as new equipment is going to be within the licenses that they were given by the FCC, and it's regulated by the FCC. So they will not go outside the scope of their licenses.
Brenda, but as you've told us previously, and as we know from looking at the certified drawings, the changes are part of a 5G retrofit, which means retrofitting equipment to accommodate the incoming 5G technology. I mean, that's been conceded at the previous meeting, and it says it right on.
Yeah, and like I said, that's the 5G and is not in the 5G that the gentleman was speaking of, where they're talking about, using the new broadband that's advertised on TV. It's not the same thing. They're going to be deploying the same frequency. So the frequency being used on the equipment they're taking down, 850 is up there on the tower right now, and they're going to stay with the 850 frequency using the newer antennas. So the 5G, the high speed that everybody sees on TV, that's not what's being installed here.
Okay, are there any other comments from the public? Okay, John, I see you have your hand up, but I'll get to it in just a minute. And I have to go through two different screens because there's too many people on the line to fit in one screen. Is there anyone else present at the meeting? Neon Fish, I see that you have your hand up. Do you have a comment? And if so, what is it? Ms. Fish?
You have to unmute yourself, Neem.
You're muted. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've written to the Woodstock Town Board as well as CC the entire planning board on this application. I was definitely with my daughter Natani Boudreau, an activist in getting 18 Woodstock business owners, and they're not small fry business owners, to be against 5G. So my understanding of the AT&T application is that I have read it. It seems very vague to me, and I wondered if you could counter it with adding any language through Mr. Campanelli to say that it is not going to install 5G at whatever gigahertz that is harmful to us, which is probably all of it. Can we add that to the language?
Well, since that comment, Ms. Fish, is directed to the planning board, I will tell you that we deal with the application that's in front of us. So I'm not sure what you're asking the planning board to do.
You cannot, I see. So you cannot, when an application is given, you cannot counter and add to the application an addendum.
Well, the planning board reviews an application that's presented by the applicant. So it seems to me if the applicant wants to modify their application, they would have to tell us that that's what they want to do. And then then we would consider it.
Well, then so in terms of, because last time the planning board was key in rejecting the T-Mobile application. So this is a different case.
This is a case. A different applicant?
No, it's a different application, but why was the planning board key in denying the T-Mobile application, which was another addendum that definitely did have 5G, and why are you not? Just so I'm educated on this matter.
Thank you for your comments. I will just give you a limited answer because the time is short, but the T-Mobile case was a different case factually, and it sought to expand the array of antennas and bring in new antennas that were larger and over a larger surface area than T-Mobile had previously had on the tower. And the planning board made a decision that it was a substantial increase in the surface area and visibility that defeated the camouflage elements of the monopine tower that the town had paid good consideration for. And that was one of the bases that under the rules, it could be denied because an eligible facilities request that substantially changes the physical dimension of the tower is not entitled to the automatic approval that they were seeking.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for the time to explain that to me. I guess I will just continue my fight. I do not trust this application. AT&T and T-Mobile are in partnership on many projects. I don't know if that's the case, and I feel like the language is very vague on the application.
Again, because we have to move through the hearing. The planning board is well aware that at the prior meeting, the representative for the applicant told us that the equipment was being brought in would be 5G capable. And if she's saying something different now, that's something that we would have to weigh. We have to make a judgment on what we're going to do on this application. So, we'll do that. But this is what the applicant's telling us today. We also know what she told us when she was earlier before us. You understand? Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else that has their hand up on this application to speak? John Laval?
Yes, thank you. The question I have is for Ms. Lewis. You stated that at this time, you would not be going into any of the quote your phrase, millimeter. So I presume that you're not going to a higher frequency at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So you're staying at 850.
Mhm.
Now, is any of the equipment that you're going to be placing there, including the antennas, capable of higher frequency dispersion?
I can't speak to that because I'm not an engineer. I can just tell you that whatever equipment we're installing on the tower will be operated within the frequencies that AT&T is licensed, by the FCC with. And with that.
Okay, to make it clear, Ms. Lewis, I also have a license for the FCC. Now, what I'm not getting is clear answers. I didn't get clear answers on the last hearing we had, because every single time that we ask a technical question that has to do with 5G placement on this tower, the town's tower, we get the same answer. I'm not capable of answering that. Well, I suggest that somebody, your employer, send someone who is capable of answering the questions. Thank you.
Understood.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak or make a comment? Anyone have
Yes,
their,
I'd like to speak.
who is that?
Raji,
And state your full name, please.
Raji Nevin.
Okay, go ahead. What is your comment?
My comment is similar to John Lavelle's. I'm sitting here listening to this representative from AT&T, and it seems to me that whenever it's convenient, suddenly she tells us she's not an engineer. And then when she wants to spout out facts about other things, suddenly she has the knowledge. I don't understand at all from anything that she's told us what the benefit to the people of Woodstock is for them to quote unquote upgrade their equipment. It's not benefiting us. If it's the same frequency, what is the point in even doing the installation and the upgrade? What is the point? How is she helping the community? In other words, how is she helping the clients who are paying for their service? Has any of the clients that are paying for that service asked for them to do this installation? What is the benefit to us as a town?
Okay,
None.
you've made that point. I will give the applicant an opportunity to address that if she wants to. Basically, we've received the comment.
The main purpose of the upgrades is to increase both the speed and capacity on AT&T network to meet customer demands now and in the future.
We don't need that.
All right, thank you for your comment. Brenda, again, forgive me the familiarity. It's easy just to use your first name at this point.
That's okay, no problem.
Can you tell us again why the signed off plans that you presented refer to this project as a 5G retrofit?
I mean, when I received the drawings, that's just the name on the drawings. Why they call it 5G retrofit, I'm not sure, but I can find out for you.
Okay. Again, at the meeting that you attended the last time, you told us directly that it was your understanding that being would be 5G capable. And, that was said to us. Okay, anyone have their hand up to make comments on this application?
I don't think so.
All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Any seconds?
Judy moved.
All right, all in favor
Everybody
of
else?
the public hearing?
Aye.
All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the hearing has closed. Okay.
Stuart, your chair because Peter lost power.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
help.
That's all right. So at this point, we have the application, we've held the public hearing, and I just want to make a few statements. I want to reiterate that in their application, the applicant here, Centerline, on behalf of the AT&T entity, admitted in their application that the land on which the tower is located is owned by the town of Woodstock. It's also my understanding, based upon the 2004 agreement that was struck between the town and JNS, which built the tower, that there's an express provision in there that once the tower is built and 2 tenants are acquired for space and use of the tower, that the ownership would be transferred. And so from that point forward, the ownership would pass to the town, the ownership of the tower. So clearly, since the tower has been constructed and there have been tenants up there, 2 or more, it's my view that the town not only owns the land, but also owns the tower. But be that as it may, it has been the historic practice of this planning board to require that applicants that are not owners of the land that is subject to proposed development must provide written proof that the owner of the land consents to the applicant coming before the planning board to apply for approval of the project to be located on that land. Now, in this case, since the town itself is the owner of the land on which the tower is located, my view, and I'm going to ask for the other members to weigh in on this, my view is that the planning board should defer making any decision on this application at this meeting until the question of the town's consent to the application is resolved. There's no letter of authority that's been filed with the application from the town board itself. And since the town board is the governing body of the town of Woodstock, it seems to me that we ought to hear from the town board as to whether they're supporting our granting this application. I don't even know if they've seen it. And so we certainly don't have any statement of consent from the town board, which has the responsibility, and I would say the duty as well, to weigh whatever factors are within their bailiwick before deciding whether they want such an application to go forward. So my recommendation to my fellow board members is that we should defer making any decision until the question of the town board's consent is resolved. And I also want to have the town board ask the applicant to provide written proof from the town board, a written statement from the town board that the town of Woodstock consents to this application for a project to be done on the town's land.
Moved.
And well, hold on, I'm not done yet. And I would also want the consent to be provided to the planning board no later than 10 days before the planning board's first meeting in January of 2022. So it puts a bit of time frame on the applicant so that it doesn't linger, but it gives them enough time for them to go to the town board, however they would do that, to see if the town board will consent and provide a written statement to that effect, consent to their application. So at this point, I would ask my fellow board members if anyone else wants to weigh in on that, pro or con, or have any comment about it. If not, then we'll see if we can get a resolution to go down that road. John?
Peter, excuse me, Stuart.
Right.
Yeah, we've been through a couple of these now. What they're proposing, in my estimation, is simply a corporate upgrade that has no material value for the town. And this is an exercise they're putting us through. And they never provide anyone who can answer detailed questions regarding what they're planning to do, how they're going to do it, and how they're going to implement 5G in this town. If they intend to go to some sort of a, as they put it, millimeter, which would be in excess of 1,000 gigahertz. The difficulty here is they're not being forthcoming. They're not being transparent. And we really need some answers. And the answers have to do with whether or not we're going to provide them an answer, our answer, or our recommendation.
Well, John, your points are well taken, and the point of view is probably shared by others on the planning board. But our problem is that we're a regulatory body, and I've been consulting with the planning board attorney on this and reviewing regulations and so on. And it's my understanding that as a planning board, so long as the requested equipment change does not substantially increase the physical dimension of the tower, then we're obligated by federal rules to approve it. So even though we would have reservations about how forthcoming they are or how forthcoming the applicant is not being, I'm not sure that that is a basis for denying an application. So that's why my focus has been on trying to see what the town board has to say on this, because it's their property, it's their tower, and one of their first responsibilities is to look after the health and well-being of the citizens who elect them. And
I understand. I'm not suggesting denial, Peter, Stuart.
yeah,
What I'm suggesting is that their application, because of the inability to answer questions, is incomplete. And therefore, we can't consider it.
I'm going to call on John Lyons because I believe you may have a comment about this. John, as a planning board attorney, go ahead.
Thank you, Stuart. I have a suggestion to make that may provide a pathway to help address this issue. I think perhaps rather than having the representative for the applicant come back with answers at the next meeting, my suggestion was going to be that the planning board, in addition to requesting the consent that you described, also ask the applicant to provide on the same timeline a narrative description by somebody qualified on the applicant's team that would provide, in a way that a layperson could understand, an explanation of the functional differences of this equipment, the future capability of the equipment, and also the future plans for the use of this equipment. And I think that that would be a reasonable request by the planning board to try to address some of the concerns that have been raised both by members of the board and members of the public.
Well, I think those points are well taken. But I would also say that at the last meeting, it was agreed by the representative that the equipment change is to bring in equipment that's 5G capable. And their own plans say that this is a retrofit for 5G. So, I don't think it's rocket science to understand that they seem to be making this change in equipment to facilitate their move to 5G. But if the board wants to get further answers from them on these functional aspects of the equipment going in, I don't have a problem with that. We're going to be asking them for the consent of the town board anyhow. And so it seems to me they can do both of them at the same time. But again, is there any other board members that want to weigh in on this or make comment?
This is Brian. May I
I've
speak?
been trying to get in for the last 10 minutes.
Okay, Judy, please go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Judy. Sorry, I didn't see you.
I do not understand how the application can be complete if they have not gotten authorization from the owner of the land. I don't see how the shot clock can even be operating without that.
No one's mentioned shot clock tonight, but I don't know if John Lyons wants to address that or not. But I'm not comfortable voting to approve, if we're required to approve any application that the owner is not in front of us for. And at this point, the owner is the town of Woodstock, and they're governed by the elected members of the town board, but they're not presently before us. There's no letter from them. There's no written statement from them. So as far as I know, they're almost a stranger to this application so far as the application is concerned, and they're not in front of us, and we need them to be in front of us and to know that they're consenting to the application. Otherwise, I can't think of any case where we've ever allowed a special use permit or granted a site plan change for someone's property when they haven't asked for it or they haven't consented to it. It's almost confusatory. It doesn't make sense to me, and I wouldn't do it. So unless we're required to do it. So I would like to know that. There's another aspect of this that I've commented on before in past meetings that is of concern to me. I'm well aware that planning board as a regulatory body is prohibited by federal law from considering the health effects of radio frequency emanating from its communications tower. And I myself don't really have an opinion on whether 5G is a good thing or a bad thing. But it's my sense that the town board, as landlord of the tower and as proprietor of the tower, may well have greater powers than we do to address how much energy should be emanating from their tower. I know they have the ability to negotiate leases and to negotiate terms. And I know that from the several amendments to agreements that have been provided to me by the supervisor and also by the representative for AT&T, that there have been several amendments which have made equipment changes. So that supports my belief that the town has the right of final approval over the lease terms, including equipment changes, as was suggested to me by the agreement that they signed. There's language in there to that effect, that even though the manager, which in this case is now Crown, they get the tenants and they arrange the leases, the terms have to be finally approved by the town board. So that's only my view. I'm one person on the board. We don't have a final opinion on that from our counsel, since he has to review a number of other agreements. But I think it's well worth seeing if the town board is even going to consent to this application. And they may themselves want to assess what their rights are and whether they want to go down the road of examining health issues that we're not allowed to examine. But I don't want to get in front of that. That's between them and the town attorney, I suppose, or whatever attorney they want to consult with to understand what their powers are. So, but I think in terms of handling this application, I do think we ought to defer making a decision at this meeting, and that we should request the applicant to provide written proof of the town board's consent to having this application granted on the town's property, and to provide us that consent no later than 10 days before our first meeting in January. Do we have a date yet in January?
January 6th.
So whatever 10 days before January 6th is, that would be when they would be required. And also, if we have additional need of explanations from a qualified person from the applicant on functional aspects of the equipment, we can articulate those as well in the request. So I'm going to ask for the members of the planning board to weigh in. Are you in favor of us going down that path as I've described it? Judy? Yes? Brian?
Yes, with comment, please. Stuart, I concur with your assessment and your recommendations, and thank you for your good work. I also agree with John Lavelle's commentary and Judy's. And I also think that Mr. Lyons makes a good suggestion. So I think that should be somehow incorporated into our communication to the town board.
Okay, and James, are you in favor of this approach as well? Can't hear you. James, are you in favor of this approach?
I'm in favor of everything you just said, Stuart. You were great. Thank you.
How about John Lavelle?
Absolutely, Stuart. Thank you.
Did I miss anybody on the board? Is that everybody that's here right now? Again, I have two screens. I have to go back. I think that's everybody. So from my perspective, we have an agreement by the board to defer the decision at this time and to make these requests to the applicant as I've outlined them. And I'm pleased to talk with Melissa in terms of drafting something up. And John, I'll be looking for your input too in terms of any technical information that we need explained to us that we haven't had so far. And then I can help craft the request. But Brenda, you still on the line?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, thank you for remaining. So I think I've been clear as to what we're seeking. I will tell you that we'll follow up with a written confirmation so you can have it in an email or writing as to the requests that we're asking you to answer by 10 days before the first meeting in January. The first meeting is January 6th, did you say?
Yes.
So that would be December 26th, I suppose, right? It would be 10 days before, or December 27th.
24th, I think. I think it was Christmas Eve or somewhere along that line.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll spell that out in the letter. John Lyons, do you have any further concerns or comment from the legal end of things as to the way we're going to handle this?
Not at the present time, other than asking that you make a motion and take a vote on the action that you're taking this evening.
Okay, so I'm going to move that the planning board approve the approach that I've taken, which is namely to defer making a decision on this application at this meeting and until the question of whether the town board is consenting to the application is resolved. And to that end, the motion will also include agreement that the planning board will ask the applicant to provide written proof to us of the town of Woodstock's consent to this application being granted on town land, and such consent to be provided to the planning board no later than 10 days before January 6th of 2022. And the resolution also includes that we will also ask the applicants for such further technical information concerning the functionality and other aspects of the proposed equipment change that will be elucidated in a letter to be issued. Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. Okay, the motion carries. And with that, I think our consideration of this application is concluded for this evening.
Thank you.
All right, so is Peter still offline?
I think so.
All right, so there's one other matter that concludes the public hearing. We have a sketch plan review for Robert Pearl. Did we do that already?
No,
No, is Mr. Pearl here?
I think Paula Chandler. Paula, are you here? Maybe we don't have a sketch plan review. Let me take a look. Paula is the rep.
Well, this is on Robert Pearl, Planning Board number 21-1020B as in Baker.
Yes. They're not present.
And the rep is not present, Paula Chandler.
Yep,
They lost power.
they
Yeah,
have.
okay, so we'll mark that tabled and I
Yep.
suppose we'll schedule it, okay?
Yep, thank you.
All right, what do I do with the agenda? I kind of lost the agenda here, so Melissa, can you help me out? What else?
I
do we-
can. All right, planning board, we're up to unfinished business. So we have to, we'll make it easy. We'll do it case by case. We approved the application for the stock subdivision, but we need to approve the resolution. We'll do it one by one, Stuart. Sound good?
Okay, so this is a motion to approve the resolution as drafted for the stock case, which is Planning Board. Hold on.
21
EB 21-1080G.
This is for, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Now, I got my agenda back up. So
Okay.
the next is 4345 Mill Hill Road. We did the public hearing, but Peter moved on to the next public hearing without addressing any action on the case. And I made a note as to whether that this is the Early Terrible property, right?
Yes.
So there was a question in my mind as whether the approval that might be granted should be temporary or permanent, because it was tied during the discussion to the existence of the pandemic and how it helped people during the pandemic by moving seats outside and so on. But I don't know what Peter's thinking is on that or not. That was one of the things I was going to address with Peter and the rest of the board. So I don't know if any of the board members want to weigh in or we want to table.
Stuart, if I may, I'm just wondering what the precedent is
For what?
for doing a temporary extension during a pandemic consistent with a ordinance or action that was taken by the town.
Consistent with,
An ordinance or action, a special ordinance or action that was taken by the town. So there were. You understand what I'm asking?
I'm not sure if there's I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, so there's a special provision to grant this because of the pandemic, right?
I don't know. I know that the supervisor gave emergency permission to people. I'm not sure was it authorized by the town board or he just?
We don't know. We're assuming it was because it happened on numerous locations. So what I'm trying to convey is if we do a temporary with one, will we do that with everybody else or how does that work? It seems very unclear to me.
Well, to me, every case stands on its own merit. But I also had a question as to what the wintertime use of these outdoor covered, areas would be. If it's 30 degrees out or 20 degrees out, are they going to be using them? Are they going to close down? Are they still using the indoors? I wasn't really clear on that. So my suggestion is that we table approval. We table a motion to approve the resolution, approve the application, and to approve the resolution until the next meeting that we can do it. And then the applicant will be back in front of us and we can revisit it.
So moved.
Is there any? Okay, is everyone in favor of tabling this till the next available meeting?
Aye.
Okay.
Sure.
Aye.
So that one's tabled, and because we haven't even approved the application, and I think Peter ought to be here for that as well. So
Also, just wanted to say hello, everyone. I just got in. I am zooming in from the Yucatan.
okay.
Jeez.
Okay, so the next case is for unfinished business is 22 Rock City Road. And this again, I don't think we've approved the application. We did the public hearing at some length and then moved on to Centerline. So I think that Peter will be present for this. And also that I believe there's going to be a discussion that should be had amongst the town board before we can decide whether and to what extent to approve the application. So I would suggest that we table that to another meeting as well in early January.
So moved.
I have a question. You said the town board. Do you mean the planning board?
I said that I meant the planning board. You mean so the planning?
Okay, I'll second the motion to table.
All right.
Thanks, Judy.
All in favor of tabling 22 Rock City Road until the next available meeting in January?
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries, it's tabled. So next is Centerline Communications. We've already handled that. Motion to defer it. And the requests for the town board's consent and further information are going to be made. So there's no further business to do tonight on that.
There's one more, 62 Ricks Road, that's the outdoor exhibit. If you could just make a motion to approve that resolution.
Was that at the spa, the Glow Spa?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll move to approve the resolution as drafted for 62 Ricks Road LLC, site plan review case number 21-0311A.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, the motion carries. Okay. And then the last item is to approve the return of escrow to Young and Sommer, parentheses Verizon, for SPR number 20-0322B.
It's 60 some dollars, guys. $68.53. I just want a clean house in this office.
Hold on, I think we gotta slow down.
I move to return that escrow to Young and Sommer. Anyone opposed?
Second.
Anyone in favor?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
carries. Approved by acclamation. All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right then.
Late,
Thank you,
everyone.
planning
Guys have a
board.
good night.